This is Dolynny TV, ladies and gentlemen. Not the result we were looking for last night against the Minnesota Wild. However, before I even get this video going, because I've already seen people trying to take advantage of what I titled yesterday's video, so we're going to roll back the tape from yesterday and we're just going to quickly review what I said and kind of then review what happened last night, because this is key. This is absolutely key that we do this. So let me roll tape for you and let's go. Is going to start tonight. Well, Mike Smith has yet to lose under Jay Woodcroft. So if it's going to happen, it's going to happen tonight by theory, correct? Correct, especially when more than half, 3 out of 5 of Mike Smith's victories this year have come under Jay Woodcroft's Edmonton Oilers bench. Now you look at this here, the Oilers, right? Mr. Mike Smith has been giving up increasingly more goals per game as it goes along for the Jay Woodcroft Oilers, right? That first game, bang, oh my goodness, against New York, 37 saves on 38 shots, a goal against, boom, stellar, 974 save percentage. Then you get up to this 30 out of 32 performance, 2 goals against the LA Kings, 938 save percentage, stellar, right? That's a huge get for the Oilers, especially against the Kings, in which was a big time game. And then the Ducks game, you can talk about Mikko Koskinen giving up soft goals, Tyson, but you can also talk about Mike Smith giving up a softie on that first one, that deflection goal from Adam Henrique. I'm sorry, at some point, the Edmonton Oilers goaltenders have to figure out how to stop deflections, and that right there in itself, that first goal against Anaheim, man, would I love to have that one back. However, right, you live and die by the sword, and that is the sword that the Oilers goaltender, the book on them, they are not very good at stopping deflections over the past 3 years. It is what it is. It's okay. Hey, I've made my peace with it. I'm still going to talk about it because you can't be ignorant to the fact that it's a thing, but it is what it is. And Mike Smith still walks away from that game with a 7-3 victory and a 900 save percentage. Now sitting at 904 on the year. Yeah, the goals against ain't great. It's like 331, but when you got to think about, well, he's given up a total of 5 goals in 3 games in the past 3 games under Jay Woodcroft, right? That's a $1.66 goals against average. So yeah, of course, it's going to start coming down. But as I said, it's kind of one of those traps. And I you know what? I said San Jose was the trap game as well. And Stuart Skinner came out on top with the shutouts. So now you look at tonight's game against the Minnesota Wild. Everybody has said in the comments since I started doing this thing, this gets back to being tough tonight, right? Everything gets tougher from here on out for the next little while for the Oilers, especially given the fact of how many nights we've played already in the past week, which was noted, I think, 5 games in the past 7 days for the Oilers at this point. So what do? You get into this here and you just try to ride out what's going to be a tougher game against the Minnesota Wild, and of course try to get your goaltending to hold steady like it has over the past 5 games. However, you also be cognizant and aware. I think I screwed that up. Sorry, the old thick Canadian accent coming through on that one. But you got to be aware that there is a potential for this to be a trap game, especially if you get down early, especially if you don't get the goaltending you've gotten the past 5 games. Ladies and gentlemen, it's a good game tonight. Hopefully. The year is 2022 and Dolynny TV is still innovating how to bring you Oilers podcast type related stuff. So with that accounted for, I want to now flip over to something on my phone here. A read from Mark Spector, the breakdown of last night's game against the Minnesota Wild. And just look at this right here. So there's a quote in the body of the text. Of course, we've been playing a lot of games, no question. This is a quote from Leon Draisaitl. But I think every team goes through this. We don't want to use this as an excuse. Now, Spector's talking about why this is a reason the Oilers sleptwalk through last night's game as compared to an excuse for why they sucked last night. And, of course, Spector, right, we know the book on him most times. It's not an excuse. It is a reason why the Oilers were sleepwalking last night. And then he goes on in the next paragraph to say, every season there are games like this one that arises. Edmonton had won 5 straight, which were clearly well and prepared, and was on the second of back-to-backs, which we were, after going into Winnipeg, flying back home, and then playing at 6 against Minnesota. while the Wild were rested and playing guilty, having allowed 6 goals in 2 straight losses coming in. So, yeah, all right. And then he goes on, the next line is, this was one where you should have bet the college fund on Minnesota, the NHL team that has enjoyed more success than any other while playing in Edmonton since 2010, 2011, 17-3 since then. And of course, was it just one of those nights? That one you can debate. But again, that's why I rolled the pre-roll viz there for you. Is simply I knew what was up. I knew what was up going into last night's game. Minnesota, right? They're a tougher opponent. Everybody that's been commenting on Dolynny TV since I returned has been saying, "Ah, dude, we're going to eat through this early schedule, and then when it gets into Minnesota, Tampa Bay, Florida, Carolina, that's when the Oilers are going to come back down to earth." And they did to some degree last night. Surprisingly, they still managed to score 3 goals, which, I mean, right, I shut the game off by 4-0, came upstairs, had supper, watched a movie. If you haven't watched Like Father, I think it is, on Netflix, it's actually a pretty decent movie. But then it finishes up 7-3, and that's it. That's all she wrote. So, good little family night for me on Family Day long weekend, and then back to work today, unfortunately. But that's okay. We get through things and we get done. But that doesn't change the fact that going in, I was realistic in my expectations. I knew, right, probably not the best scenario to run Mikko Koskinen back-to-backs. That's why Mike Smith was starting. But at the same rate, you knew what you've got in Mike Smith throughout the year, right? He's had some good games. And he had 3 consecutive, one really good, one pretty good, and one that was good enough to win. And then you try and run him out against Minnesota with a very tired Oilers team, which I don't know how you could describe it any other way. Evan Bouchard overskated about 6 pucks in that first period. And I don't think that's because Evan Bouchard's a bad defenseman. I think that's simply just because Evan Bouchard was dang tired. So was the rest of the Oilers roster. And away you go. And obviously, right, it's inevitable that Jay Woodcroft was going to lose, and I'm very, very fine with it. Now the problem is, again, as it was under Dave Tippett, how do you respond? How do you move forward? How do you get going? And I really like what Jay Woodcroft is instilling in the Oilers, is if you have a problem, you learn from it. You don't continue it as a problem. You don't freak out because it's a problem. You learn from it. You grow from it. And he said that probably every post-game press conference so far in his 6 games. So still sitting on a 5-1 record. Flashback to the start of the season. Yeah, we can talk that all we want. However, right, based on what we've seen, even out of 5 out of 6 games so far under Jay Woodcroft, it has been good. Now, what are the takeaways realistically from the Minnesota game? Well, number one, right, the Oilers do not have the goaltending that you can give up breakaways on every single second of the game and expect them to make the saves. How many of those breakaways did you see against Smith last night that ended up in the back of the net? The one against Winnipeg that Mikko had. The Oilers' goaltending is not the kind of goaltending that night in, night out steals you hockey games. And that's, I don't care what you think. I don't care if you think I'm bashing them. That's being realistic about it. I really struggle with comments that come in that say, oh, well, you can't bash these guys. You can't say bad things about these guys and then say good things about these guys. But then other comments that come in and, well, I'm realistic and this is what I believe, but I'm not allowed to be realistic. So this is me clearly stating on the record that I am realistic about what the Oilers' goaltending is, and realistically the best option for the Oilers right now is to have Stuart Skinner starting every second game at minimum. The guy is giving us our best chance to win. I get you can't mismanage a young goalie, but to this point we have not mismanaged him. And once he becomes that guy that gives you the best chance to win, you roll with him. And right now, in this situation, Stuart Skinner is. Do you want Mike Smith to be the guy that steals you a playoff game? Cool, fine, I'm good with it. It's okay. Do you want Mikko Koskinen to be tossed in there to back up for a situation and get you a win? For sure. All 3 goalies are guys who are going to win in the NHL. They have won in the NHL as recently as this year. So there's absolutely no reason we can't trust them to get the job done, but you also can't trust them to win a hockey game like the one last night. There's absolutely no way in the world they're going to do it. So that's really it, right? This is just me boasting that I told you so, essentially. That's why I rolled that pre-roll viz. And then, of course, secondary to that is the biggest takeaway is it was bound to happen. It happened. Now what? What do you do moving forward? Where do you go from here? Well, you go to Tampa. You get on the road. You take a couple days off, right? Monday, Tuesday, back in action on Wednesday. And then you ride out the road streak. I think the expectation is 7-8 points, and away you go. If you can do that, my goodness, it's going to be a good little doozy coming up here soon at the end of things back in Edmonton. I think Mark Spector pointed to the game against the Habs on March 5th as being the big game that you want to look to on your schedule in the next 2 weeks. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Tyson. This is Dolynny TV. If any of this made sense, good for you, because it made no sense to me, but I had to do it. So we'll catch you in the next one. See, the sense of humor is still there, eh?